This is akin to those people who think they can learn how to be parents by buying the right book or joining the right group. I'm afraid there is no substitute for experience. But we live in a buy and sell culture, don't we? And so we don't value the aged. Why? Because they don't make very much at all. Now, what I find ironic is that we hear about a spiritual hunger in life all the time. Everybody wants to feel meaningful lives. They want to go and have meaningful experiences. And so they go out and they buy the books, so they go to the seminars, they attend the churches, they go on the retreats. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to do any of that. Because if we knew, if we understood that our job was to get enough life that we could then work it into a meaningful whole at the end, we wouldn't be so hungry for it every blessed day. Maybe if we knew we had a job to do as we got older, not just for ourselves and for others, not just to retire, not just to play golf, when we already know from Mencken that that's already a lightweight exercise, that our job is to make sense of life and that we have to live it and then try to understand it. Søren Kierkegaard, the great Danish philosopher, said, life can only be lived forward, but it can only be understood backward. If you've only been around one block, there's not much to understand. So if you're 20-something in this room, and there are a few of you out there, I know my eyes are too old to make you out, but I know you're there. You haven't lived enough to understand anything yet. Get old. Then you have something to work on. In other words, relax. Your spiritual hunger will keep. It will only grow. It is time to develop not just a spirituality, but a sociology, an anthropology of age. And I have some hints as to how that might happen. I'm going to start with the one thing that being old has over youth. Maybe there are more, but the one thing I know for sure, you've been around a long time. It is called perspective. Even I have reached a point where when people refer to a certain period 20 or 30 years ago, I don't think of it as a long time ago. I was there. How long ago can it have been? But those older than me, and I've known a few, remind me that they've had that same experience. To someone like me, born in the 1950s, the Second World War is as far away as the Peloponnesian War. It's all in the past. Am I correct? For people my son's age who were born in the 1980s and later, the Challenger disaster is as old as the Lincoln assassination. And we know that's not true. What age brings is a reminder to those who are young that there were human beings in the past. They're not dates in a book. They're not facts to be memorized. They actually happen to actual people, and some of them happened to me, and some of them happened to you. Our role as aging people is to humiliate the young and remind them that the world did not begin with them the same way the old of our youth did that to us. And I don't mean that in a funny way. I mean that to be humbled, to be brought back to a sense of reality. For example, I only have my own life to use. I was born of a very ordinary father who was born himself of a very extraordinary grandfather, in that my grandfather was born in 1872. That's relatively old for people of my age. What you need to know is that I knew him. He lived into his 90s. Now, anyone with a modicum of math will understand that my grandfather had a more than nodding acquaintance with veterans of the Civil War. I am one step. Remember that 6 stages of Kevin Bacon thing? I am 2 stages away from Abraham Lincoln. I am as close to Abraham Lincoln in my existence as I am to President Kennedy. I am as close to George Washington as I am to Barack Obama, because my grandfather, who was born in 1872, met people who knew George Washington. Me, my grandfather, 4 steps, and I'm with the founder of the United States of America, which isn't to brag, it's to say that 200 years ago is nothing. Age reminds you of how short time is, how close it all is. I had a great professor in college teaching ancient history who said, you know, it's a long time ago, but if you step into a room with 50 people 20 years old, meaning the classroom, you've already got 1,000 years sitting in one room. Look around. We go back to prehistory here. Really. By the time we total up all the years that we've all lived in this room, we predate the pharaohs here, which is to show not how old you are, but how close they are. The genius of age, the power of age, is that it stands on the hill of experience and can look back into time and say, that's not as far away as you think. And it means all those forces set in motion by the Second World War, by the Civil War, by the Revolution, by the Peloponnesian War are still playing out in our lives. I look at the Tea Party movement and I hear echoes, not only of populism in 1900, I hear Andrew Jackson's party making the same gestures. I see Shays' rebellion taking place in 1780. Anyone who's lived it and learned it knows how close we are to the past. That's the great gift of age, is to compress history into a whole that can be grasped. This doesn't sound very spiritual, but you understand that anytime you can transcend time or place, you are doing spiritual business. Finding the thread that links people, times, and places is what weaves us into the larger fabric of life and reminds us that none of us has a privileged place on the planet. Not one of us stands head and shoulders above anyone except, as Isaac Newton pointed out, because we stand upon the shoulders of those who preceded us. If I put a little child on my shoulders, that child, she could look out and see further than me, but it's not because her legs are so long. We forget upon whose shoulders we stand. We forget upon whose lives we depend. And age reminds us of that. It's an important perspective. And how does age practice this spiritual gift of perspective? I submit that there are 3 ways, and these are the dues, the taxes that age owes spiritually. One of them is to praise, one of them is to bless, and one of them is to remember. At the beginning of this sermon, I say, who of us does not wish we could have or want still a parent to say, attaboy, good girl. Every elder in this room can be any parent on the planet and say, I like you, to a younger person. What a good job you did. You can give benedictions every day. The question is, do you? Do you pass your benediction as an elder, if you are one, on to someone every day? I submit this is your duty, your dues, your tax debt to societies, that when you're an elder, you should find someone every day who's younger than you, who's looking for hope and guidance, and say, you did a great job. And not in a patronizing way either, because we who are younger than elders don't want to be reminded of how small we are. We want to be reminded of how good we are.